Okay, well, I'd like to introduce Marisha Auerbach. I don't know if I'm saying your name the way you say it, but
Yeah, you're saying it well.
okay. I've heard some people say Auerbach and anyway.
Now it's our back.
Okay.
Like hours shared
Yeah.
and thought of the composer.
And she has Permaculture Rising Farm. And he's given us some really interesting presentations over the years and including this one, which I just thought was terrific. And you're probably tired of hearing me say that I'm still just blown away that she lived in Portland for 2 years without a refrigerator.
They even made it into the email.
Blows my mind. I think it's fabulous. So you wanted to make, we haven't done introductions yet, have we? Can we do a couple quick introductions?
Well, I just realized that a clicker, and so maybe that'll work with yours, and then you won't have to switch slides. For me. It's a perfect, it's fantastic.
Report.
Yes, hang on. I think they do, actually.
But we could start with introductions while we figure
Just
that out.
discovered them.
Well, look at that.
I don't know if this will work. That should drain like that. Should go in like that. Yeah.
You could save the presentation to your computer and then take out my thumb drive.
Could have done that. You wanna try your, have your little thing there? Oh, sorry, hang
No,
on.
it'll do it on your computer.
Hmm?
Is it moving?
No.
Oh, you have to go in presentation view on your computer, but you don't have to put it on Zoom yet.
But you can. Share, I think I'm already sharing, I'm already sharing.
Oh. You just had to click on the right one.
Well, let's stop there and then go back to it. Isn't technology wonderful? I'll put it on display here. Slideshow mode. Come on. Whoa, pulling it. Wait. Oh,
It works.
okay. I think we're good, yeah.
What are we gonna do? Did you say you want to do
Oh,
introductions?
Yeah, sorry, I'm Deb Jacob, president.
Randy Merkel, I'm the club treasurer. Jeff Foster, club secretary.
Rachel Jackson.
Former officer.
Jerry Stokesbury, vice president.
I'm Mary's person.
I'm Randy Person.
We're just here, members. Yeah, well, yay.
And Marisha Auerbach.
And yes, thank you. I don't know what happened there. Where did you go? Where did you go?
On the left side.
Yeah, but it's different than what I'm seeing on my.
Yeah. Thank you.
Here.
I see that.
So Jan, would you like to introduce yourself? Whoops, hang on.
Yes,
Folks can't see us.
hello.
Hang on.
My name is Jan Johnston, and my daughter Megan is also here in her kitchen making fig Newtons. Yeah, we picked a lot of figs in my yard, and so we're making fig Newtons. They're pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are.
Nice. And
We'll be talking about making fig Newtons today. Unless they want, which would be great.
well, good. Well, thanks for being here. And Megan, would you like to introduce yourself? Oh, that is that your daughter?
Yeah, that's my daughter. She's right behind me. You want
Yeah.
to say hello?
Hang on just a second. I'm trying to get you so I can show you here.
My laptop is a separate one, but I'm saying hello from my mom's. As she said, I'm in the kitchen turning our
Well,
preserves into cookies.
well, thank you for being here. I'm the only one that could see you, but
That's okay.
you want to hear more about the fig Newtons that you're making. Now I have to set this up all over again. Well, thanks everybody for being here, despite the heat and the smoke. So,
The day where it's better to be in here than outside.
yeah. Right, that, and we'll go to. Sure, yeah, can I do that again? Well, let's give it a try, maybe, see if it'll work, because I'm not seeing what you're seeing quite there,
But Megan and Jan can see it.
but I hope so.
Okay, hopefully they'll let us know. We ask them, when they see it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let me try to do a slideshow. Randy. Well, Jan, can you see the slideshow?
Yes, I can see it.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Okie dokie.
All right, well, thanks everybody for being here. Yep, like Deb said, I lived without a refrigerator in Portland. I've been growing most of my own food for the past 20 years or so, and at one point when I lived in Southwest Olympia in Delphi, the refrigerator kind of became the almost compost. You know, when you have so much wonderful stuff outside in the garden and in the pantry, the stuff that's in the refrigerator is less appealing than, what is outside. So I started really practicing doing what I could with everything I had, and I've become quite versed in all the different things that you can make with lots of different things. Except big Newtons, of course. I don't know how to make those. I've never done that. So that's a picture from last year's harvest, I think. Unfortunately, the pears are not as abundant this year. I could have used like halfway as abundant as last year. They definitely didn't need to be as abundant. I don't know if anyone else is feeling that about pears right now. Yeah, but I certainly have more apples.
So you think pears were more abundant this year or last?
Last year I was harvesting 50 pounds a day from my two of my 4 bartlett trees.
Wow.
And this year I have hardly any pears, but I had no gravensteins last year, and I have a ton of gravensteins this year. They're all very small. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's not moving.
That's my fault, I think. No, because I'm not on it right now. Gee, many Christmas. You are screen sharing, okay, and I need to do this. Oh, gallery. No. Sorry, I'm gonna have to stop sharing. We'll try and set it up again here.
So what's everyone got an abundance of? Let's hear that while she figures it out. What do you guys want to talk about preserving?
Did you see the apples sitting over there?
Yes.
Do you know what they are?
I mean, they look like it could be a rabbit, but this one's freaking huge. That is a really big apple.
And they've been dropping for weeks
Oh, wow.
out of a very big, large, tall tree.
I mean, Gravenstein does sometimes have this like yellow and red, but that's really early, and I don't know what's much earlier than
Is that what a
What's
Wanuchi
that
early
now?
kind of looks like?
what is it?
Wanuchi early?
I don't know. We need Lori here, Lori Bracken. Sometimes they're yellow and sometimes they get green. She would like cut it open and look at the inside and see like the expression of the seeds, and then want to see the
The
leaves.
seeds are just turning brown.
Just now. And that was your indicator, Jerry, right, about when your Gravensteins were ready? Is yours were, you have a few that dropped, but then you looked at them and they weren't.
I opened them up, and last week they were white seeds. This week they're brownish,
Mhm.
so.
Well, these are nice specimens. What are we
Huge.
doing? Can we turn? No.
Right, okay, well.
So we're thinking about apples.
Do you wanna sit here and do, and move it?
No, you could just move it for me if
Okay,
you want.
I'm happy to do
Yeah.
that.
I'm better standing up so I can point and see
Okay.
everybody and
Sorry.
yeah, it's just take a little longer, but I have just about like, I think I have like 30 slides. And then I was planning on just having discussion. Hopefully it'll stimulate discussion and we can talk about like what you all want to know more about. So how many people do canning? Cool.
Sorta.
Freezer.
Freezer canning?
Freezer jam.
Uh-huh.
So not real,
That's not
real.
canning, that's freezing.
That's why I didn't raise my hand.
Yeah, it can be quite an endeavor. So you really want to make sure that everything is super sterile. I've got a nice handout on botulism if anyone wants that. I do have a friend whose family died eating green beans that weren't properly canned. So it's important to know what you're doing. You basically you've got a couple different types of canning. And I'm gonna go through a bunch of them. But first you want to make sure that you're selecting fresh food and that it's clean and that everything is sterilized. And then we talk about low acid produce and high acid produce. And the high acid produce is safe for boiling water bath canning. And the low acid produce is when you want to use a pressure canner. So let's go to the next slide. So there's this is like a scale of acidity. Acidity is on a scale, an exponential scale. So you definitely don't want to be like, oh, maybe it's close enough. Don't want to do that in canning. And so most of the things that we're looking at that are high acid, are most fruits. Pickled vegetables can be canned because they have vinegar in them. If you're making vinegar pickles. So we'll talk about the different types of pickles. There's vinegar pickles and then there's lacto fermentation. So back over there, we've got fermented garlic that's lacto fermented. We've got the vinegar pickles that could have been canned, which are the ones with kohlrabi in them. And then this lists like barbecue sauces and salsas, yogurt and vinegar. I have never canned yogurt. I haven't done much with dairy other than making my own cheese. And salsas, you still want to make sure that you add acidity to it. So a lot of the newer varieties of tomatoes have the acidity has been bred out of them. And so that's why whenever you're making something with tomatoes, you want to add 1 tablespoon of lemon juice per pint or 2 tablespoons per quart. Or you could do citric acid or vinegar. And then vinegar has this variation, we'll get into with fermentation, making apple cider vinegar, which when you do your homemade vinegars, they don't have a reliable pH. And so it's not really safe to rely on homemade vinegars when you're doing boiling water bath canning. Yes. So, vegetables for canning, basically it's tomatoes and then you can add the vinegar or the lemon juice or citric acid. And then most other vegetables are considered low acid produce. And so you need to can them in vinegar. And so that's why you see green beans can be canned as dilly beans or pickles can be canned in vinegar. But you wouldn't do you wouldn't do just canned green beans. You need to use a pressure canner for that. And then most fruits are high acid produce, so you can can all sorts of fruits, apples, pears, quinces, plums, peaches, and grapes. And you generally don't need to add much to them, to work with the acidity. So I've got some pictures, probably of each of these. I think those are poached quinces in the picture, but they could also be canned peaches. So that's a regular thing that I do. And that's my salsa. So this slide here is just for the canning process. These OSU gives these handouts on your checklist for what to do if you're going through any of the different types of canning. And that's really helpful if you're starting or if you're just wanting to make sure that you're doing everything by the book. Because you can just go through this sequence and then know that everything is all good and that you're doing it correctly. So basically, you want to sterilize your jars, and while you're sterilizing your jars, you prepare your product, and you want to make sure that when you put your product in the canner, that you put your product in the jars, that your jars are warm. because you'll break jars sometimes if they're not. And then you wanna heat up the canner at about the same time. It can be quite a dance of figuring out how to get everything warm at the same time. So I'll show you some tips that I do. While you're heating up the canner, it's good to put your lids in a pot of warm water to keep them supple. So usually I'll take a little saucepan and I'll boil my water and then turn it off, boil, let it simmer, or just take it off the burner, depending on how my timing is with the canner. And then you pack your warm jars. You want to make sure you remove any air pockets. Most of the time people use a spatula to do that. Then you want to wipe down the rims. So it's nice to have I use a canning funnel on top of the jars to make sure that I don't make a big mess. And then I'll use a rag, like a very clean rag dipped in hot water to clean off the rims. And when your rims are clean, that makes it so the lids will stick better on the jars, because you want to make sure when you're done that the lids have been sealed well. And so then you'll cover your lid with the ring and ensure that you'll cover the jar with the lid and the ring, ensuring that the lid is the ring is just tight enough to stay on. You don't want to make it too tight. And then you put it in the canner. There's those canner baskets for lowering things into your canner. You set your timer, so depending on what you're doing and your elevation depends on how long you can it. So there's we've got some canned salsa over there. So some of the things that were canned that's over on the table there for you guys to try are maraschino cherries were canned, but those are open. Those were in the fridge. And the jams and the tomato butter were canned. So that size, those are what's in the half pints, the jelly size jars. So those were all canned at 10 minutes. And then we've got in a pint jar, there's some salsa for you to try. And that was canned at 20 minutes. And then we've got 2 quart jars of juice. One is pear cider and the other one is grape juice. And I'll show you how I did the grape juice and the cider actually. And those were canned at 40 minutes. So for quarts, and it varies. You'll want to know what you're doing in the recipe and how long it says to can it.
And when you say canned, you mean boiled?
Yeah, I put them in the boiling water bath. Yeah, so that's what we're talking about here. So that, yeah, I guess it's not clear whether it's pressure canning or boiling water bath. So I'm talking about boiling water bath right now. Yeah, I'll get to pressure canning. And then you take everything out from the canner when it's done, you set it on a towel, and then you want to let it sit for 24 hours before you move it, to let it cool down. And then make sure you label it, put it away, and you also want to take the rings off the jars, double check that the jars are sealed, and then put it away. Make sure that it's very clean on the rims.
You put it away without the ring on
Yeah, without the ring on it.
Oh, okay.
Mhm. Yeah, like those 2 juices, they didn't have rings on them, and I put the ring on to take it here, just in case anyone wanted to try it.
If there's any juice or anything underneath the rim, it can wick underneath a seal that's there, but not as tight as it could be, and start growing things.
Yeah, it's a space for bacteria right under there. Yeah, and sometimes you'll can something and it'll can accurately, but there'll be some substance that comes out, like Marie said. Yeah, so you just want to make sure when you wipe, because once it comes up to a boil, if that lid seals, which you'll know because you won't be able to pop the top, then that's good. And so anything that's outside of the jar just needs to be cleaned off. Yeah. Yeah. So there's different ways to sterilize jars, and this was kind of a game changer for me. When I first started canning, I would sterilize the jars in the boiling water bath canner, which is really awkward. You've got a big pot of boiling water and you're trying to put jars in there and take them out, and there's all this steam coming at you. It's really inconvenient. So my favorite way is to do it in the oven right now, because I can always put them in the oven and then I take out the jars as I need them. So if I'm doing, a big batch of salsa and I've got more than 1 round in the canner, then I can heat up my jars in the oven. I can bottle the salsa, put the ones that fit in the canner in there, which, might be like 8 jars. And then any more than that can go back in the oven to just keep it at temp before it goes in the canner. I haven't personally used the dishwasher or the microwave, but I really like being able to use the oven.
You can use the dishwasher on hot and just wash the jars,
Mhm.
and when you get them out, put them in the oven right then.
Yeah,
I do
definitely.
that all the time.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I just don't use my dishwasher that much. Uh-huh. Yeah, and I think like sterilizing them in the dishwasher, you'd wanna really have that sequence just right, because you don't wanna let them cool down.
Mhm.
And it's so tricky and nuanced, like when that canner is actually ready. I mean, one of these days, maybe I'll know how long it takes for me to heat up the water in the canner, but
Whatever.
yeah, sometimes it seems to take forever, right? Yeah, okay, next one. So, there's raw pack produce and then there's hot pack produce. And this example, these pictures I took off the internet, so this is showing carrots, which would need to go in a pressure canner. So why don't you imagine that they are, I don't know, what would we cold pack like, you cold pack pears, right? Like when you can pears or apples, we want to make sure that we don't heat them too much because we want to still have like a good texture when we eat them later. And that's a reason for raw packing something. But if you're packing something, fruit or vegetable, raw, generally fruit, because you don't really pack vegetables for the boiling water bath canner. If you're packing a fruit in your jar, then you're gonna be covering it with a warm liquid, which is what's gonna heat up your jar so that you're putting in the warm jar into the canner. And then hot pack is like if I'm making salsa, I'll have heated that up and then I'll put it in the jar. So there's just two different ways depending on what you're making and what sort of texture you want. Another thing that is really common to raw pack is if you're making vinegar pickles with dilly beans or with cucumbers. Because you don't want your cucumbers to get too soft.
You saying, it sounds like you're saying jelly beans.
Oh, dilly beans.
Oh,
Dilly.
dilly beans.
Dilly beans.
I don't know,
Uh-huh.
what are those?
That's pickled green beans with dill.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's what I miss.
Very good.
I miss making those. I'm allergic to green
Yeah.
beans now.
Don't believe the Ball cookbook.
Oh,
The old one. I
The
had.
Ball, the new Ball cookbook made an error in the recipe.
Yeah.
You're supposed to put a quarter cup of salt in. The new book said 2¼ cups of salt. And I had never made the.
Oh my gosh, that's true.
So I followed the recipe. And I had the beans all perfectly cut in the pint jar. I poured that liquid in and it was like they were in the Dead Sea. They were- And I stuffed them back down and processed them and oh, they were awful.
Yeah.
And so we looked at her mother's Ball canning book,
Much older.
which had the correct recipe. I mean, huge typo. It was 36 points.
oh,
Wow,
God.
that's a big,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sure funny. It's a
So
story.
double check your recipes.
Yeah, another thing to mention too about like raw packing things versus hot packing things is, how I mentioned earlier, like if you've got a big batch of salsa and you pack your jars and you have more than will fit in the canner that you can put it in the oven to keep heated up until you're ready to run the second round. You wouldn't want to do that with anything that you're raw packing. Because if you filled it up with the warm water and then put it in the oven, then you'd be cooking it for longer in the warmth than you would want. So you'd want to time it better. Yeah, and the pear, oh no, I didn't bring the pear juice. I have some recipe, it's called pears 3 ways, and so it's you get pear juice, you get a ginger syrup, and then a ginger pear syrup, and then you get pears poached in the ginger pear syrup. And so that's the 3 ways, and it's really good, but it takes all day long. And it's really hard to coordinate because you don't wanna heat the pears too much, but it takes a really long time. Yeah, okay, next one. So this is like the equipment for boiling water bath canning. So this is the rack for lowering the jars into the canner, and that's it's got wire that is spaced so that your jars are able to fit nicely in so they don't topple over, and that's real convenient. A canning set of tongs, which makes it really nice for taking your jars out. They fit nicely on top of the jar, but they also fit nicely on the side of the jar. So if something falls over, you can easily pick it up. There's a spatula there to make sure you don't have any air bubbles in your stuff, and then a canning funnel. I like to use a stainless steel canning funnel more than the plastic, but you can get either one. I did once get one that was too wide for a narrow mouth jar, and that was inconvenient, so you wanna make sure that they fit. And so you want to make sure that when you're canning that the jars don't touch the bottom of the pot. So you can use a really large pot that's not a canner, that just have a boiling water bath. But you want to make sure they don't touch the bottom. And so this is like a silicone thing that website showed about doing small batch canning in a smaller pot. And then I usually just keep my lids warm in a small pot like that.
Why not touch the bottom?
Because they can get too hot.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and you can break your jars.
Mhm.
I broke a lot of jars.
Hmm.
That's the only reason why that's one of the reasons why I'm qualified to give this presentation. Yeah, once I was canning for someone else, and she had a case of peaches, and I was young, and I was like, yeah, I know how to can. I broke a lot of peaches, a lot of jars of peaches by not doing the the raw pack right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So around like, when we had the pandemic, a lot of people were getting into canning. And there was also a lot of supply shortages. And so some people were using like mayonnaise jars, they're like the lid fits, we can can in this, but don't do that. You basically like, even if the lid fits, there might be slightly different variations within the jar. Mayonnaise jars are just not, they don't have the required thickness. And so you really only want to use standard canning jars, Ball or Care. And I'm happy to provide this presentation too, because I know there's a lot of written things, but that's basically what this slide's saying. And so then you got pressure canning, which is what you do for low acid produce or meats. Basically the only thing I've ever done pressure canning is stock. Like when I have a lot of bones and I want to make stock, I'll use a pressure canner. It's important to get your gauge tested every year for accuracy if you have a pressure canner. And you need to go out to extension, out over like Hawks Prairie area to get it tested. And they'll give you a certificate to make sure that it's correct. Or you can go down to Centralia or Chehalis. The extension is a little bit easier to access for me down there. And so with pressure canning, you get it up to temp, and then you have the boiling water, and you have like your regulator is going to be like hissing. And once you get it up to that pressure, then and you have the lid has a locking mechanism on it. And so once you get it up to that pressure, then you start timing what you're doing. And you need to watch the gauge to make sure that the gauge doesn't change very much with how much pressure. Because that's what makes this process safe. In boiling water bath canning, you usually would fill with water to cover your lids. And in this case, you don't, you just have water towards the bottom, but you need to have the right amount. And again, it has the rack on the bottom. So, this is a lot more, with pressure canning, it takes equally as long, I've found. And it's a lot more specific. So I don't really want to pressure can unless I have to.
Well, you're dealing with hot scalding.
Yeah.
I mean, you have scalding stuff before the other way too, but it's different and you can see it all the time. If this explodes, you
Yeah.
can get seriously burned.
Or even when it's done, like, you want to like tap the pressure regulator to let off the steam. And that's a lot of steam to let off, and then you got to wait a while for it to cool down before you can open it. Yeah, and so you can't do it as like 1, 2, 3, like if you have a lot of salsa with a boiling water bath canner, you can just do one, timer goes off, take those out, take the other ones out of the oven, put them in, but with this, it's like, it's got to cool down, it takes forever. Yeah, and so I only do it when I have a lot of stock, and I only do it in quarts. But so canning green beans, a lot of people want to have a lot of green beans, and that's one thing that some people do pressure canner with. And so green beans is just an example of something that if you're not doing your green beans in vinegar, you want to do it in a boiling water bath, in a pressure canner. So these are cool steam canners. It's like Marie said, at either one, you have like a lot of hot water. And a steam canner is really nice because you just have like enough hot water to go up to here. And that boils, and you put the hood on, and you start timing when the steam comes out of the hole. And so it just uses a lot less water, and so I think it's a lot quicker, because when you're canning, you lose a lot of heat to the sides of your pot. heating up that pot, there's like, it takes a lot longer because of all the heat loss on the sides. I really need to get a wood stove made at my place that has like a spot for a canner so that you can, like with insulation around it, so that you can insulate your canner, because it would go so much faster if you had something like that. So, steam canners are helpful. I don't have one of those. One thing that was really helpful, and I didn't take a picture of it today, I meant to, but I got a barn cat. And so that took a lot of time in my day. But I just got an Instapot for canning in, for boiling water bath canning. And basically you can only do small batch canning. You can do like, you know, half the jelly size jars. But I had some medical stuff and I wasn't able to lift a lot of stuff for earlier in the summer when all the currents were on. And I had like for 5 days, I had these red currants sitting in sugar, just waiting for me to make them into jam. And then my friend came over who was supposed to do it with me on day 3, and she had something else come up. And then I'm like, who's gonna help me like can these currants? And finally I realized that if I got an Instapot, that I could do it in an Instapot. So you can, if you're doing small batch canning, you can sterilize the jars in the Instapot. It's got a sterilizing setting. And then you can also boiling water bath can in there. So it's not safe for pressure canning. While they can pressure cook, it says that none of that, all the Instapots, even though they can pressure cook like beans and other things, it's not, it's not like, the specifics aren't dialed in enough to say that it's totally safe for doing pressure canning. But for small batch canning, it works really nicely. So that was a big game changer for me.
Is that, with the steam canner, you still need, a burner,
Mm-hmm.
right? Oh, okay. I didn't know if it was, electrified,
No, it's on a burner on the stove, and I have seen an electric canner somewhere. I don't remember, it's obscure, because I have some odd memory. Maybe I saw it on like Facebook Marketplace and was like, what is this? Yeah.
I understand how, I just never seen one.
Yeah, I used it once a long time ago when I lived on Vashon Island, and it was just like really fast. Yeah, so here I'm making pear butter on the we had a biodigester at my place in Portland, so we fed it manure and it let off gas, and then the gas went to feed this cook stove. And it was really hot that summer, so it was really nice to make pear butter outside. That's generally like one of my big complaints about pears is I don't like Bartlett's because there's so many that you have to put up at a time when it's so hot. And I want to make pear butter, I want to make pear sauce, but I don't want to can anything at that time of year. So this was nice to be able to do that outside. It's nice I'm looking forward to having an outdoor kitchen at some point. So grapes, those are Marisha Auerbach and Himrod grapes on my roof when I lived in Portland. And so with the grapes, I dried for raisins with the Himrod because those are table grapes, so they don't have seeds in them. And so I tended to do that. And then I love grape juice. So I had another kind, Lenora, as well, which is the one that's in the purple jar, the jar of grape juice over there. So if you go to the next slide, steam juicing is really awesome for putting up things. Anyone use a steam juicer?
I just got one.
You just got one?
yeah.
Yeah, it's so great. I mean, you have all those grapes, right? And so steam juicing is so great because you keep your jars in the oven and then you start steam juicing. And as long as your jars are sterile, you can take them out and with a steam juicer. So we've got, for those of you who don't know, this part is filled with water. This is just like, it's kind of like a bundt pan on top of the pot of water that's boiling. So steam comes up through the hole in the center. And then it steams this basket up top, which is like a colander, that you fill with your grapes or whatever fruit you're juicing. This is really great for gummies too. Anyone grow gummies? Gummy berries have a really big seed, but they're super nutritious. So it's like, what do you do to put up gummies? And this works really nicely. They're also high acid. So as the steam heats the grapes, then the juice from the grapes falls into this other vessel right here, which has the hose coming off of it, and there's a clamp right there. Can you hit the advance one more time? So that I played with the settings and I couldn't make that a better picture. So I just took I have my jars in the oven. You can see I have my pot right here for my lids. And then I would take the jar out of the oven, I would fill it, so the liquid coming out of the steam juicer is boiling as is. And so you can just fill up your jar, you wanna get the right amount of headspace. And then once it gets there, you clamp it down or you put another jar underneath it, cause it can be really slow steam juicing. I mean, this would take, I actually usually ended up doing this on Yom Kippur, which is a day when, we're fasting, like when I'm fasting. And so I just would end up doing the steam juicing of grapes and it would take all freaking day. And so then you can just like put the lid on the jar, because the liquid in the jar was warm, the liquid went into the jar warm. You put the lid on, you put you wipe down the rim, you put the ring on it, and you just put it aside on your towel in your kitchen to sit for 24 hours and it's done. So that is super convenient. I really love that.
So Marisha, I've gotten my grape juice by just mashing them, boiling them, and then doing the bag trick.
Mm-hmm.
So the grapes burst by themselves
Yeah.
and
With the
it's
steam.
weak in the steam.
Mm-hmm.
And do you get a lot of extra water mixed in with the grape juice?
You should taste my grape juice. We should open it. Yeah. And I just got one, so you're welcome to borrow my steam canner, my steam juicer if you'd like. I haven't even used it yet. My friends gave it to me. Yeah.
So you're saying that in this process, you didn't go to a boiling
No,
bath?
you don't have to. Isn't that like game changer, right? Yeah, suddenly it's like, ooh, I want to steam juice everything. Yeah. Yeah, it's really great to be able to, especially because steam juicing can take so long. You know, because you gotta get enough, heat to get the grapes to start sweating out that juice. And then, well, I had a whole rooftop, right? I had a green roof and I had a whole like patio that was covered in grapes. And so I would be doing multiple rounds in that basket. Yeah.
Can you use it for other fruit?
I've used it for gummies. Have I used it? I think I've used it for aronia.
Can you use it for like if you cut the apples up?
I think you could, yes. Yeah, I haven't, because I like pressing cider. Yeah,
You can try with other berries.
I
Anything like
haven't.
Blackberries or blueberries or raspberries or anything.
I haven't. I didn't even have one until like,
Oh, yeah.
I got one I just got it in May. My friends
Mhm.
gave it to me. But so this was like, I'd have so many grapes and I'd be like, okay, I just gotta borrow a steam juicer. And so every year when it came time for the grapes, I just borrowed it from someone else instead of like being able to experiment on my own. Yeah.
I'm doing blackberries in mine now, but I'm not sure what I'm gonna do with the blackberry juice.
Well, I mean, I was just thinking with all the smoke in the air, I think I read that like blackberry juice is really good for our bronchioles. So that's, it's nice that the blackberries are ready right now. So there's cider. So we're pressing cider, this is at Fertile Ground. I don't know if you guys know Yellow Sullivan right there. We're pressing cider, and so I do a bunch of different things with my cider. So generally I'll drink the cider, I'll put a SCOBY in it, like a SCOBY stands for Symbiotic Community of Bacteria and Yeast, and that's what you find in like Bragg's apple cider vinegar, and that's what you need to turn apple cider into apple cider vinegar. And so I'll do some for vinegar, and then I ferment a bunch for hard cider. And then while we were doing this, Gail had the canner going, so she was also canning some of it. She heated it up in a pot and then put it in jars to put in the canner. So that's real nice. I don't know, does anyone have a cider press that can be loaned out? We don't, right?
We talked about, we're trying to figure out if we should, have the club, invest in a juicer.
Yeah.
Or a press rather. And so we hadn't quite got that discussion across the finish line. I think we're
Yeah.
thinking about, the logistics of it. And,
Yeah.
if we did, we'd probably want to make it more of like an event where people bring their stuff.
Yeah.
Because if people take it, then you have to worry about, are they gonna clean it? And, what if it gets damaged and all that kind of stuff. Anyway,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
we're.
Yeah,
Still-
I
still
need
a
one to
discussion.
borrow right now until I get one, but specifically like next weekend. But I can always bring stuff over to Dana's, and then Dana, I think I got a grant where I might have money for a cider press, but I need to make sure I have the money for the water line first, because the water line's the most important part of the grant. So, it's a main line for the whole farm.
Oh,
And then I wrote in a cider press in the grant, as well as some animal fencing, but the water line project seems like it might be the full $10,000, so
oh, wow.
we'll see.
Well, good luck.
Yeah, yeah, but Dana's usually really great about letting me come over with pressing, but he's got me confused too about which kind of cider press I want, because he's got one of those nice stainless steel presses, but he won't start using it unless we have over 150 pounds of apples, which really isn't a problem. But that's really efficient, and that's kind of a nice one if you just have two people, like Dana and I can run that, no problem, just us. But if you want to have like a cider pressing event, then, having one of the wooden ones is kind of a nicer way to go.
And I bet the stainless steel cleans up easier than the wooden.
I mean, they're not that difficult to clean up. I mean, I borrowed one, and when I was in Portland, we used to borrow them all the time. The local brew store had a cider press, and we used to go by bike, actually go across Portland and pick it up on a big bike trailer, and then bring it back home. And you just need to clean it and be attentive. Have a nice brush. It's not that hard. Yeah. Especially if you go back one, especially because sometimes people use these bags and other times they don't. And if you use the bags, you don't get all that stuff stuck in the cracks. And so the bags are really nice. And you can't see, she's turning it, right? So the plate is right down here, right? It's under there, but underneath that plate is another bag. So once you're done pressing, you kind of fold the bag in. Yeah, you can see here, there's two bags. And so I have a collection of bags that I use. So there's just like a collection of things that I had canned when I took this picture. Just ideas of things that you can can. So salsa verde, that's like tomatillos with jalapenos and onions, and then there's tomato sauce and red salsa rojo, peaches and honey with ginger, grape juice, apple butter, I do pear butter, applesauce, mulberry plum sauce, all sorts of different ideas of things that can be canned. And when I first started canning, my mentor would say, yeah, you could keep these and give them to your grandkids. And so that's one benefit of having canned food, is that you have it for a really long time. It's shelf stable. It doesn't take freezer space to store it. But you do lose some nutrition with the high heat and keeping it in storage.
Yeah, and no energy required to keep it.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think, I was just reading up on our laws, our cottage industry laws here in Washington, which I guess are some of the most lenient in the country. And I think that you can sell just about, and the cottage kitchen laws say that you can sell anything that's shelf stable, which is pretty interesting, without a specific permit. You're not supposed to have them in the same kitchen as you use your kitchen. Everything's supposed to be stored separately. Yeah. So this guy, Sandra Katz, wrote The Art of Fermentation, and he's kind of well known for popularizing fermentation in recent years. His book, The Art of Fermentation, is probably his third book, and it is really amazing. It's a thick book, and you can look up just about anything and get these recipes of fermentation from all over the world. So whether it's torshi, which are Iranian fermented pickles, or I think he has the recipe I use. No, that came from my friend in Romania. I like to ferment whole cabbages to make fermented cabbage rolls. That's delicious. There are so many different recipes that he has in that book. And see, it's fermenting vegetables, fruits, grains, milk, beans, meat, and more. So that's his most comprehensive book. And I met him. He did a class with us at Fertile Ground downtown, and then we also hosted a class with him at Wild Time Farm, maybe 15 years ago. No, it was probably 20 years ago now. And At that time, I wasn't very confident with fermentation. Would have a yeast develop on the top, a white, like something white would start growing on the top, and then I'd throw it out. I'd be like, and just throw it out. And so when I met him, we talked about it, and he was like, the white yeast is fine. Actually, that might be my next slide. Is it? No, it'll be the slide after that. But the white yeast is fine. It's called commies. And that's really common. If it's any other color that grows on top of your ferment, then that's when you need to be concerned. So that was really helpful. You just kind of peel it off and put it in the compost, and everything underneath it is fine. And the reason it develops is because either the temperatures got too warm. So the sauerkraut that I brought, there's a small half pint jar of sauerkraut that I just took off my counter yesterday and put in the fridge. And so you got to be aware of like when you reach that flavor that you want. Sometimes you don't have enough salt, and that can make it, if it's not salty enough, or if it's not like held down under liquid, it can develop that because fermentation is an anaerobic process, lacto fermentation. And sometimes it's because it just gets too warm. And so you got to be really careful about like your microclimates with where you're fermenting. So it's a metabolic process where you've got a microorganism that you introduce into your food, and then it creates a desirable change in that food or beverage. So basically we're fermenting with lactobacillus bacteria or lactic acid, and they're basically on like most of our vegetables. There's already lactobacillus on it. But we sometimes want to like kickstart everything by adding some culture. And so sometimes that would be yogurt, like this event kind of crept up on me, but I wanted to have like a lacto fermented soda to share with you guys, which is really delicious. And that I just like, make a juice out of fruit. And then I add some sugar, and I add some yogurt, and I take a 2-liter bottle and I squeeze it so that it gets out all the air. And then over a 5-day period, it poofs back up until it's like a balloon and you can't like squeeze it. And then it's done. And then you have like a naturally carbonated beverage. You can also do that there's something called a ginger bug, or like kombucha can do that. I can't do kombucha. It's too gurgly for me, but that's like a liquid lacto fermentation. And sometimes like salt helps get the acidity right. So like with sauerkraut, you guys all know Sandia probably, and so then Sandia is holding her favorite sauerkraut pounder. And so you get the cabbage in a bowl, and you like put some salt over it, and you pound it to get the salt into all of the surface area of the cabbage, and then it starts to sweat, and it creates this liquid, which then will be what submerges the cabbage underneath it. So this is sauerkraut here. Sometimes I like to ferment in jars. Sometimes I ferment in crocks, so that's also sauerkraut in the crock. And for that one, I just went to Goodwill and got a crock and got a plate that matched it. And that's just got a jar of water on top, holding the plate down on top of the cabbage. And so you can see there's like liquid on the top because you want it to be fully submerged under liquid, because lacto fermentation is an anaerobic process. So sometimes you can weight it down with other things. These are kind of pretty. I don't know where we'll get those. I found that online. I have these. This one's my favorite, the pickle tops. And there's one actually in the fermented garlic over there. And it's nice because it's got this little handle, so you can just pinch it and pull it out. This you fill with water and use it as a weight to hold things down. In a wide mouth mason like this, you can also fill one of those half-size jelly jars. Like the one the currant jam is in, the really small one. You can use that as a weight filled with water. It fits in a nice wide mouth quart nicely. This is fermented lemons, preserved lemons, which I really like to use in my tabbouleh. Sometimes I use it when I make a baked chicken. And then to do that, you take lemons and you cut them in 4, but you leave them still connected on the bottom. And then you coat them with salt, and you rub it back and forth to get it to start sweating the juice, until you have enough lemon juice that you can submerge the lemons underneath in their juice. And this is a really popular condiment in the Mediterranean world. It's normally known as Moroccan preserved lemons, but when I was in Saudi Arabia last summer, they had those lemons. And sometimes I think in Saudi they dry them, and they're called blackened preserved lemons. But of course, everyone who I was with was way too rich to like do anything like this, and they couldn't tell me about it. So, next.
Oh, interesting. Good one. You can do it.
Yeah. So things that I like to lacto ferment. I love making kosher dill pickles. So then with that, these are both dill pickles. I put the cucumbers in, I wash them, I cut off the blossom end because that makes them stay fresher for long, that makes them stay firm for longer. I usually put in something that has tannins in it, like a grape leaf or an oak leaf, or a horseradish leaf. I put in some garlic. You don't even have to peel the garlic, you can just throw it in. And then I make a saltwater brine that's like 2 tablespoons of salt to 4 cups of water. And put it in. So proportionately, whether I'm doing a half gallon or a gallon, that's the ratio I'm looking for. And then weight those down. And this one just has like a tea towel on top with a rubber band. These are really nice, these airlocks, because you don't have as many fruit flies in your kitchen, which is pretty nice. There's different kinds. There's like ones that, I think I have a slide for them, but there's one that looks like an S. And then there's this kind. This is a 3-piece airlock, and they're much easier to clean than the other kind. You can usually get them at a fruit store. I love making like fermented vegetables together, so that'll be like cauliflower, carrots, onions, pickles, and garlic. Those fermented vegetables over there, the kohlrabi, those are with vinegar, but I could have just as easily done like a saltwater brine instead. It just would have taken me probably longer. These were instantly done, and those would have taken longer. Baby radishes and turnips are really good. They're really nice on salad. I've done beets with citrus zest, coriander, and ginger. That was delicious on salad. I've made my own olives. Olives are a lacto fermented product. I do hot sauce every year, so I'll first ferment the peppers and then I'll grind them up to make the hot sauce. I've done a sweet pepper paste. Specifically like the Aleppo pepper paste that they use in Syria is a fermented product. The fermented garlic, which you guys can smell over there, that's the fermented garlic. So this picture was probably taken in 2021, which was when that garlic was made. And I've been eating it until now. You can even try it now. I made fig butter. A salsa is really nice. Like if you need to do a small batch salsa, you can just like pack all your stuff in a pint jar or a quart jar, and then like add that amount of, if you have a quart jar, you add 2 tablespoons of salt, stir it up, and let it ferment for a couple days. And so your fermentation, depending on how big your jar is, tells you how quickly it can be done. So generally it takes like a week to ferment something in a quart jar. Something in a pint jar would be about 3 days. A large crop of sauerkraut usually is about a month, but you generally want to taste it as you go. And when it hits the flavor profile that you like, then that's when you want to put it in jars and put it in the fridge. So basically, like you've got these microbes that you're introducing, and they are digesting your food and bringing it up to this different flavor profile. And so at the point when you reach that flavor profile, you want to put it in the fridge so they stop doing that. They might like slowly be doing it or something, but so fermented food doesn't go bad. It just, if you've done it correctly, it doesn't go bad. It just gets to a texture that's less desirable. Your sauerkraut might become slimy because the microbes have digested it so far. And then usually I'll throw it in soup. The Koreans have a big culture of like what they make with kimchi when it's gone too long. The Korean kimchi pancakes and all the different things that they make with their kimchi when it gets too far. Yeah, and kimchi is a lacto fermented product, right? When they make kimchi, they take the Napa cabbage, they open it up, and similar to how I described the lemons. They'll put the salt in the Napa cabbage and rub it so that it gets over all the surface area. And then they often make a paste with kimchi has a paste of like ginger, garlic, hot pepper, and scallions, I think. And then that's all rubbed in there. And so traditional kimchi is always with the Napa cabbage, but then there's been a lot of other variations that people do. Yeah, I made kimchi for many years with my good friend Chung from Korea. We always had to do it exactly her mother's recipe because her mother would not have it otherwise.
But this may be a silly question. What's the difference between kimchi and you're using cabbage and sauerkraut and you're using cabbage?
Kimchi has those, is very specific, those four things are used, so kimchi is spicy. And it has, it's usually done with Napa cabbage, where sauerkraut's usually done with, the others, the heads of cabbage. And then kimchi is ginger, you make a paste with ginger, garlic, hot pepper, and scallions, I believe. There's four things, and you make this paste, and the way Chung would do it, or her mom would do it, we'd add fish sauce, and we'd add, some other things. And they do a big thing every fall in Korea. They do, it's called kimjang, and that's where they all get together and they make enough kimchi for the whole winter time. And so it's a big community event, and that's what we used to do every year. Now they're in Tennessee. So this is commies, and most of the time it kind of looks like what it is on the spoon. It's just like this, like white stuff on top of your ferment. And sometimes it's like, like this, and it's in the vegetables. And so in this case, you just scoop out those vegetables that had it on there, and you say, oops, I forgot to put it in the fridge. I need to put it in the fridge right now so that this doesn't happen. And so I listed, let's see, did I list them all? I said, yeah, the batch might not be acidic enough. You might not have enough salt in the brine. It might be too warm. It might be overexposed to oxygen, or you didn't sterilize your jars. So those are the reasons that common yeast forms. And you basically just skim it off and discard anything that's associated with it, and you can eat the rest of it.
Oops, too hot.
No, I think this one goes first. I think this one's first. Yeah. So this is just making cider. Who makes their own cider? Hard cider. Is it ferment?
Not yet.
So with hard cider, first you want to put it in your primary ferment. Usually, if you're doing a small, like a non-commercial batch of cider, I'd say small, but I've got like 30 gallons going right now. That's done in a number of buckets. So a 5-gallon batch, you do it in a bucket. You juice the apples, you put it in a bucket, and then you just let it sit. And you want the bucket to not have its lid on tightly, because that's when there's going to be a lot of movement and it's going to expand. And so sometimes it would boil over, or it's not boiling, it would just increase and go over. So this is when I made plum cider, and so the plums were in a bag because I didn't use the cider press, I squeezed them, like Randy does his grapes. And so you can see all the foam that happened with all the activity from the yeast. And so you get your primary ferment going, and then I use the siphon to move all the liquid into a carboy, which would be my secondary ferment. And then you wait for that to clarify. And I put an airlock on those, like you can see on the ones that are all wrapped in towels in the picture on the top. And they're all wrapped in towels so they don't get exposed to sunlight and to keep them a little bit more insulated. The picture on the right of the apple cider is incorrect. You should never leave that much airspace in with your cider, as I learned. You generally want to have, more like this plum cider looks correct. And if you have too much airspace, it'll cause some off flavors. And I spent a lot of time when I was learning how to make cider. I was always doing the last shift at the Home Orchard Society, all about fruit show. And so I'd be there for the last shift, and I'd get all the pears at the end. So I'd have hundreds of varieties in my pear cider. And then all of the volunteers would stay after, and we'd have a potluck. And so I had all the people who really knew how to make cider critiquing my cider. And so now I've gotten pretty good at understanding where I had a lot of mistakes when I was younger. So that was a big one. And I think it's a lot for a lot of people. So if you're making cider and you have a lot of airspace in the carboy, you don't have enough, what you do is you basically pour in other cider. And so if you didn't have it yourself, you could go buy some apple juice. Similarly, if you're making wine, that's what you do. You find a wine with a similar flavor profile and pour it in, because it's more important to not have the headspace than to have it be all your own stuff. But also when you press cider, you can just make apple cider vinegar, or you can make apple scrap vinegar, where you just cut up your apples and you add some sugar and some water, and you just mix that up. There's a recipe right here. You cover with a cloth to keep the fruit flies out. You stir it daily, and after a while it starts fermenting. Then you strain out the scraps and move it to a new jar, and then in a few more weeks, you'll get the SCOBY, which is this film that comes on top, and that's what's in the picture. In the middle, right there, is a SCOBY, and you can kind of see there's like a little pancake-like thing floating on the top of that strawberry vinegar. And so to make the strawberry vinegar, I just like, whenever I'm eating strawberries, I cut off the tops and I put them in water with sugar. And I stir it every day until, I'm going through the same process. So you can do this with just about any fruit. And a lot of times if you have fruit that's not like the most appealing fruit to eat, you can do this with it.
So how long of a period can you just be tossing stuff into it? Like just like a couple days kind of thing, or?
Yeah, I mean, you can do it definitely a couple days. Yeah.
And so you don't need to go and buy your,
The brags to have your own SCOBY,
well,
make your own.
I'm trying to remember, like Saccharomyces, you don't need to.
No, I mean, those lactobacillus, the cultures we need are on the fruit already. Yeah, it's just there. Yeah.
Neat.
Yeah. So, dehydration, my friends here were really excited. They were going on a camping trip. It's a really old picture, these friends. They were going on a camping trip and they had grown and dried all the food that they were taking camping, which I think is so awesome, especially because my ex-partner used to always tell me, like, I wouldn't, he didn't like doing anything. He was a curmudgeon, but he'd tell me I wouldn't like camping because the food's not good. I was like, what are you talking about? You just don't want to go. Because you can grow your own food and bring it camping. It's so cool. And so the Excalibur dehydrator is my favorite one to use. That's a 9-tray dehydrator. I've had that one for maybe 20 years now, and it is just a workhorse. I've been given 2 more dehydrators, but really like 9 trays of apples is like what I need for the year. I don't need to be making more fruit. Like, for me anyway. Now I'm making more because I'm selling some of the farm stand. But that dehydrator is the best. And if you want a smaller one, they also have 4-tray dehydrators. Go to the next one. I think it's about, yeah. So one of the cool things about the Excalibur is that it's got this temperature setting and the timer. So this is just the top of my dehydrator, and it's got a drying guide for like what you might be drying. But a lot of the dehydrators on the market are stackable circular ones. And those ones are mostly for drying fruit, which of course is what we're mostly interested in. But if you want to use it for other things like drying herbs, you don't want to dry your leaves and your flowers at 135 degrees because they're much more delicate. You'll lose a lot of the medicinal constituents in them if you dry them too hot. So that's why I really like the Excalibur dehydrator. Because you can set it how you want. So basically their vegetables are gonna be dry when they feel brittle. And you want them to cool before putting them in a jar. And then if some are more dry and some are less dry, it's kind of by nature, they're always relatively uneven. It kind of balances out once you put them in a jar. And I think the Italian prune plums are one of the most easy things to dry. They're so good too, and you just slice them in half and take the pit out and stick them in the dehydrator.
And when do you know that they're done?
When they're brittle.
Brittle, you dry it all the way down.
Yeah, and you really want to do that because otherwise they're gonna mold.
If you
have more moisture. And things take a lot, depending on the juice content, it'll take different times. Grapes take like 3 days. So if you're wanting to dry anything like grapes or blueberries, you need to make sure that you have a hole in them so that the air can escape. And so if you don't thoughtfully pick your grapes, you want to squeeze them so that when you're taking them off the stem, they squeeze just right so that that little piece opens so that the moisture can be released. Otherwise, you'll dry them forever and the moisture never leaves.
That's what Gary Maddox, I think, was asking you about, because he'd like cremate his, whatever they were, plums or grapes or whatever. I think he didn't do that. And so just like never dried the outside, even it was like almost like charred or
those
something.
skins are.
Yeah.
And the plums, when I've done them, they basically get flat.
Yeah, totally flat. so good.
So you do yours face down instead of,
Yeah, I do them face down. You do them face up?
that's the only way I've tried so far.
Okay. I think it's just easier. I'm like a production line, like I feel I get impatient. I just like have so many things that I'm trying to do that I'm always like trying to see how fast I can do it. How much can I fit on the tray? And so it's so much, and because I have so much, I think if I think I might have always faced them downward because it's more efficient. There, no one's rolling around, and I'm just like boom, 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 trying to just like fill the trays.
And so if you do raisins, again, you just do them till they're really, there's very little
It can take
moisture.
3 days,
Okay,
but
and,
you want to make sure that you squeeze them off the stem.
Well,
And
we
then
didn't- we
you
didn't
just-
do that.
and then just put them in put them in the jar and put them on the shelf. Huh,
Yeah,
okay.
and I still have raisins from when I lived in Portland.
Mine are in Ziplocs the last
Yeah.
years.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, an advantage of, so I didn't say this with the lacto fermented food too. Lacto fermented food is probably the most nutritious of everything we're talking about. Because you're actually adding nutrition by having the microbes in it. But dehydrated food is really nutritious too. Because you're, being able to preserve all of that and dry it, and it's also really shelf stable. But it isn't something that you want to have, like if there was like an emergency and you didn't have enough potable water, that would be dehydrating for you to be eating lots of dehydrated food. Yeah. So, and then frozen food is also pretty nutritious because that tends to be stored, the nutrition tends to be stored when you freeze it. But of course, frozen food needs electricity to be able to preserve it. So if you're thinking about whether there's a power outage, that's an issue. You also, if we're thinking about earthquake and disaster preparedness, and there's an issue with canned goods or with storing dry food in jars rather than in bags. So generally, fruits frozen first on trays to protect their shape. You can imagine if you're trying to make a smoothie with these peaches that it's easier to take it out of a bag once you freeze it like this. So I do this for 24 hours and then I'll put it in a bag. That's just what I did with my blueberries this week. And
do you cover them at all with like?
when I put them, no,
No,
I don't. I don't really mind cosmetic issues in my fruit. These look fine, I don't, most of the time it's not significant to me but that's what they say is like you want to cover them with like citric acid or something to prevent discolor, or apples.
Well, no, I was thinking of like, saran wrap. No, you don't even need anything like that.
I don't use it. No, I'm pretty averse to single-use items. Yeah. So I just don't buy it because it's like you buy it and then you throw it away. So shrubs are really fun. Sometimes, like I said, I have a lot that I'm doing. And so sometimes it's like there's fruit that needs to be put up and like, when am I gonna be able to fit it in? And shrubs you can do on a really small batch. So this one is a blackberry mint apple cider vinegar shrub, which is the one I think that was really good when there was a lot of smoke in Portland. That was when I was really into the blackberries. And so I took one part of blackberries, maybe that's in a pint jar. So that might have even been less than a cup of blackberries that I mixed with, let's say it's a cup. I mix it with a cup of sugar and I let it sit on the counter for 3 days. And every day I stir it and I put a tea towel over it. And then after 3 days, I strain it out. I add an equal part of vinegar, so another cup of vinegar. And so that's ACV, that's my homemade apple cider vinegar. That's what's in the shrubs that I brought to share with you. And then it's like shelf stable and it can keep for a long time. I think the one I brought, Quince rosemary, which is one of my favorite shrubs that I've made. And I think it's from 2019. I might have been having a problem opening that jar. That might be why it's still here. So I brought that, because I like that combination. And then I also brought the red currant shrub from last year. So I do a lot of like mixing it up with different herbs too, to just get different flavor combinations. And I think it's really versatile. My friend Yuko, who is from Japan, grew up doing this, and she sticks it in the refrigerator when she's mixing it together, you know, when the fruit is sitting in the sugar, but you don't need to. So it just all depends on what your comfort level is with food out on the counter. And so, as you can tell, since I didn't have a refrigerator in Portland, I'm pretty comfortable with food being on the counter.
And you say you bottle it, like literally just putting it in a bottle, you're not canning it or anything?
No,
right?
it's
It's
not
just
canned.
in the bottle.
Yeah. So, and one thing I haven't mentioned is like for fermented food or things with vinegar or these shrubs, which is a type of fermentation because it's with vinegar. You want to use the plastic lids because the metal lids are reactive. So anything that's fermented over there has a plastic lid on it. And so the plastic lids have a gasket that goes underneath it. I can see the fermented, vinegar pickles has the lid, the gasket isn't on correctly. I can see it hanging down. Yeah. And then like, the last one, over there, the basil, garlic, nasturtium basil vinegar, that's, infusion. And that was just, I packed the jar with basil and nasturtiums and garlic, and then I filled it with a warm vinegar and let it infuse for 2 weeks like that. So that is really nice. I mean, if you have yellow nasturtiums and red nasturtiums, you know, you can have a red vinegar and a yellow vinegar, and that makes really nice gifts. So this is a picture we took one year of just one day's endeavor of coming together with friends and putting together whatever we could think of with all of our surplus. I think that the extension is a really good resource to have that hotline where you can call them and be like, I have a lot of this. Can you help me figure out what to do with it? Or is it safe to do this? I know I've called them when I had a lot of persimmons, which is actually persimmons are low acid produce. So if you're trying to put up persimmons, that's why it's usually persimmon chutney is what's recommended, rather than like you don't really make a persimmon puree and can it. You would need to add acidity. So persimmons are, most people just freeze them, freeze the puree or dry them or make chutney. Yeah. So that's what I got for a presentation for you guys, and I'm happy to take any questions. I'm also doing a hands-on food preservation workshop at my place on Sunday, September 6th. And so I think it's important, like if you are cautious about doing lacto fermentation, to get that experience with someone else of just like feeling what it feels like when you make it so that you can have more confidence.
What do you think you'll be working on?
September, I think we'll probably be loading the dehydrator with apples. We're certainly gonna make a sauerkraut. We'll probably do a fermented hot sauce. I'm not sure if we're gonna do a boiling water bath canning project. Last year I think we did applesauce. And it's just sometimes too much orchestration for having, even if I had like 7 people, it's just a lot. And then it ends, we like have it all lined up. And then the end of the workshop, we're all in my kitchen trying to can something and people start leaving. It's just way too hectic. So we'll see how it goes. If people are really interested in it, we'll do it hands on. Oh, and there's some good books to learn from. So that preserving food without freezing or canning is really cool. There's some stuff that I've tried, like I've made a tomato sauce without canning it. That was with salt. It was like an old French recipe. So I've gotten really into looking at like these historic recipes of other cultures. Because, we haven't had refrigeration for all that long and people have been eating food for a really long time and some have died because they did something wrong and we want to learn from that. And there's all these really cool things. There's one where you like you're making a tomato paste by hanging your tomatoes in a bag and they leave them outside. It's really cool. Yeah, you can make like these balls of like tomato paste, which is almost used like bouillon. Oh, I tried that once.
Interesting.
Yeah. Oh, and another one I have over there. So here, I'll just like scoot over here. That's my last slide, right, Deb?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So some things I have for you, and we can pass them around. You can look at them or try them. These are dried cherry tomatoes. And so I brought them because I brought some things because I just think it's like sometimes we have too much and want to know like what we can do with it. So I certain kinds of tomatoes I just cut in half and put in the dehydrator. I use them in breakfast sandwiches and in soups. I'll usually rehydrate them by pouring them in by putting boiling water over them in a teacup and letting them rehydrate, and then I'll put them on a sandwich or yeah. These are Bartlett pears, and then I have this jar of rescue pears. And I just brought these two as contrast because generally people dry pears like this in slices. But this is a really nice way when you chop them up, and they're about the size of raisins. If you're gonna use them for baking, it's really, you can use like where you have raisins in your recipe, you could use pears.
What? Sorry, in your right hand, what is that?
It's a jar of pears, dried pears. I'm passing around the dried stuff first. So this is rescue and that one's Bartlett. Sometimes I label varieties and sometimes I don't. These are dried zucchini. I tend to throw this in soup. But I also have done flat slices of zucchini that I use like chips instead of like buying potato chips. You could do your own vegetable chips.
Marisha, if you dry zucchini, it's okay to put salt on them.
Yes,
It's okay to put garlic salt on them.
yes.
It is not okay to put seasoning salt on them
You try this?
because
Right.
seasoning salt has sugar in it. And sugar is the stuff that if you like make a lemon slice and put sugar on it, it sucks all the juice out.
Mm-hmm.
And so zucchinis being 97% water,
Well,
if you put seasoning salt on it, it sucks all that juice out and this orange stuff pours down over all 5 trays below it.
That's an experience here. He's so make your own seasoning salt without sugar. Yeah, when I worked in Forest Grove, they were drying tomatoes with basil on top, which was really nice. Like just chopping basil and doing dried, like they were heirloom tomatoes. So that's what I got for dried. This here is a pear syrup. So this is something that came out of that preserving food without freezing or canning book, but also it's called a liege syrup. But also my friend Charlene, who's over 80. I talk a lot about this sort of stuff with her, and she's traveled the world and also is really into talking to lots of different cultures. So this one is a pear syrup, and so this is just pear cider cooked down, just pears, cooked down until it's the texture of honey or molasses. And so if you're gonna try that, one thing is if you're gonna try anything, let's try to not like stick something in like a utensil in that has already had something else, because I tend to be kind of like cautious about cross contamination. This is an aronia apple chutney that my friend made. It isn't open, but we can open it if you want to. This is a salsa that I canned that is open. And stuff, so let's put it in this. You ever use one of those jars? No, but my friend Jen has one and she loved it. Yeah, I just don't have one. This is red currant jam from this year. That was canned. And tomato butter from last year that was canned. So I really like the tomato butter for breakfast sandwiches too. So just
Smells good.
I cook down the tomatoes with honey and some spices, and I cook it down until it gets really thick. Yeah, I don't have a food mill. I need to get a food mill.
For using a food mill, because it seems really awkward.
Yeah, I don't. I've got one once. There was a kitchen food library in Portland, which was really nice. But most of the time, I'm just like, whatever, the seeds are going in. I don't have time to deal with this. This is blackcurrant jam. The blackcurrant jam, the proportion of sugar in it was so that it didn't need to be canned. This was actually overcooked, and so the texture is a little bit too much. It's still very good. It's just harder to spread. These are maraschino cherries. Maybe you heard me talking about those earlier when Jeff was trying them. They're non-alcoholic.
So Marisha, in your jams and jellies, do you use pectin?
I did not use pectin in any of these. Yeah, I usually don't because I am averse, I just don't buy things.
You just cook the heck out of it until it gets thick enough.
Well, the things I tend to make jam with, have pectin in them. So I'm not very, I don't eat a lot of sugar. And so the currant jam I just made last year for the first time because I had so many currants. And, so this year I really enjoyed the currant jam from last year, so I made it again.
Mhm.
And I make, rose ginger cardamom quince marmalade every year, but the quince has pectin in it, so that doesn't need to be, doesn't need pectin. And then for apples and pears, I make a lot of apple and pear butter.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What makes it a butter?
You just, so to make an apple butter or pear butter, you do 1 part apples and,
It's-
2 parts apples and 1 part liquid. And so I'll do it when I usually do it around when I press cider. So I do 1 part 1 part fresh cider and then 2 parts chopped apples. And then you just cook it down. It usually cooks down for maybe 2 days. And I will say that tomato butter, I wish I had cooked it down more, and that happens every single time I make that tomato butter where I want it to be thicker. But usually I get to the point where I'm just like, I've done this enough. I can't put it in. I need to go somewhere, you know? These can be opened if you guys want. So there's a pear cider. So this is just pears that I pressed last year, canned. And then, grape juice from the steam juicer.
You said that was the, which grapes?
These are Glenora grapes.
Leather or black?
They're purple.
Okay.
Then we've got some quince rosemary shrub and a red currant shrub. Things like that, Charlie. And then fermented stuff. This is this fermented garlic paste that I made. This was like use the Cuisinart to blend up like 6 to 8 bulbs of garlic with 2 teaspoons of salt. This stuff's really good. And then here's some sauerkraut heads, yeah. 2 teaspoons of salt. And if you want, I'm happy to send you the link to the recipe just for that.
You use added rosemary?
Yeah,
Right.
I'm just gonna fix this, but. So if you open any of these, they just. This just sits on the top
Been there,
there.
did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what helps it seal.
So, hold on.
No, Tim. So this one was vinegar pickles with kohlrabi, carrots, jalapenos, and onions. This is a little jar of sauerkraut. And that's what I brought for you today. That's all. Yeah, you're welcome.
Fascinating.
Does anyone have any questions?
Anyone online have questions for Marisha?
Things that you're anticipating having too much of and want to know what I would do with it?
Yeah.
It's also been a process, you know, where I made a lot of applesauce and I realized I don't eat as much applesauce as I make. So then I'd be like, okay, what are all the things that I actually will eat with apples? And so now I know how many, you know, I know that I want like a gallon of dried apples. I want about 8, you know, like maybe like 5 quarts of applesauce and maybe like 5 pints, something like that. I'll do a dozen jars of apple butter, maybe 2 if I want to do it for gifts. And I do apples, I cut them and I coat them in sugar and cinnamon and I put them in the freezer. I do about 2-gallon bags of that. So that I can easily use that for cobbler. So it's a lot of a process of figuring out like, what do I eat? How much do I need? What are the best ways? And how do I distribute everything that I'm making? And so then I have over all these years, now I have certain things that I'm like, okay, I got to make this year. And then when things come in, I'm like, okay, I made the currant jam, you know, I made this, you know, so
What is this?
That's sauerkraut.
Oh, that's
It's got red heads and green heads in
so
it.
pretty.
Yeah, and that one came from the garden. Mostly all of this came from the garden.
Anyone on Zoom have any questions for Marisha? If you do, speak up. Jan or Megan?
I ask you about the steam juicer.
Yeah.
So my first run, I filled the basket totally with blackberries, and the first quart came out really quickly, maybe 40 minutes or less.
Mhm.
And then I just kept cooking it, because it looked like there's gotta be more juice that comes out. And so the second quart took another hour and a half or 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I taste tested each one, and the second one was really bitter or tannic.
Uh-huh.
Compared to the first one. And
Yeah.
so is there a point where you know to stop, or is that unusual?
Well, I mean, that makes sense, you know, did you put in just blackberries or did you put in, okay, because with the grapes, you can also put in the stems. That's what's cool too, is that you don't need to like process it all. And I didn't really notice any difference, with the grapes, and I've only mostly done grapes. But it seems like you'd get to know the sweet spot of whatever you're doing. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. That was really, really exciting. Wow.
Anytime.
Thank you. You guys are like my warm up for bringing it to Antelope Fruit Club and all those people in the room. People who want to give me a tough time, like Steve Butler.